Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for joining this video. So in this tutorial, we want to build a web scraping ETL pipeline in Python using multi-threading concepts. Okay. So the entire process would be, we will be scraping multiple pages. We'll be doing some transformation on the fetched data, and then we will be finally loading that to a SQL database. Okay. The toolset that we are going to use will include request or request HTML, whichever you prefer, BeautifulSoup to parse HTML, concurrent module in Python, which will help us to create multi-threaded codes, SQLite package to connect to SQLite DB, Pandas to extract tables from a particular HTML page, the RE module to match regex pattern, and the ID that I will be using is PyCharm. And few of the concepts that we will be using includes multithreading, object-oriented programming concepts, and basic SQLs. Okay, so the design architecture would include that we will build an ETL class which will have all the logic of going to the page, extracting whatever we want, transforming that, and finally loading that to a SQL database. And we will create multiple objects for each pages that we want to scrape and run them in multi-threaded mode. The learnings from this exercise will be we will have a basic idea on how to scrape web and more essentially how to browse a particular page and inspect it so that the web scraping becomes easier. A little bit about multi-threading and ETL pipeline buildings, creating object-oriented programs which can be reused further in your code later on. Also, we'll be using func tools partial function. So that is a topic that we will also cover. We will also see how to store data into a relational database. And finally, we will touch a little bit on regex pattern creation and finally matching with a particular text. And these are the references that we have for all the documentation and the pages that we are going to scrape so that you can also follow along. And we will share a GitHub link which will have this README document over there. Okay, so let us jump to the website that we want to scrape. So for this exercise, I have chosen this website of NHAI. It has list of all the toll plazas in India and what are their rates. Okay, so once we are at this website, we will be able to see a list of all the toll plazas and the state names and the stretch in which they resides. And we have a clickable link over here. Once we click over here, we will have all the details of the toll plaza, the rates of it in a pop-up. And if we click on this view more information, we will be redirected to another page which will have the detailed table of rates, the name of the toll plaza, and few other details. Okay, so to understand and scrape this, what we have to do is we have to find a connection of these names and the other page that opens up. And finally, we will get a list of all the toll plaza's name, the connection link from this to the other page, and then run a program in loop in multithreading that will go to each of such pages, scrape the table, and store it in a database. Okay, so each website will have a different logic built into it, and each web scraping will be really different from the other, but the basic and bare bones of inspecting and creating a program would be of similar sort. Okay, so just to explore the connection, let us see how this works. So we will right click on this link and go to inspect module. Okay, so we see that we have an anchor tag over here which says on click render this JavaScript which says toll plaza pop-up 236. Okay, So once we click over it, this pop-up comes, and over here we have this view more information, which says that once you click on the view more, you will redirect it to another page which has all the tool related information of this particular page. So we see that this toll plaza pop-up and the number inside this function, that is 236, that is exactly same as the toll plaza ID in the other page. Okay, so we now know that if we change this number depending on the href, say for this example the href is 5753. So if we go to this page and change this number to 5753, we will be redirected to a page which has the other toll plaza. Okay, so we found the connection how to go to this info page from this page. Okay, all we need to do is scrape this entire list, get the ID of each toll plaza, and then go to this link and just change this parameter. Okay, so let us jump back to PyCharm and try to build this logic once. Okay, cool. So now we are in PyCharm. I have created a new project and set up a new virtual environment for this project. So first we will go and try to scrape this list of all the toll plazas name and extract the toll plaza ID from this href anchor tag on click string. Okay, so for this I'm using a module called request, via which you can send HTTP request to a particular page and get the entire HTML of that page. Okay, so I will just import requests, and then I will specify my URL as the URL of this website, and then we can just send a request and get a response. So response is equal to requests dot get the URL, and we can finally print the HTML as response.text. Okay, and we will just run this. Okay, good. So we have the entire web page over here. So this has the bare bones of the web page, which loads up when you first refresh it. So let us see how this particular table comes up in the web page that we just loaded up. So to inspect, we will just right click on this table and go to inspect. So it is encapsulated in a table, which is of again encapsulated in a div which has ID of toll list. So if you are familiar with web development, so you would know that our ID is a unique identifier in the HTML, entire HTML. So we can use this to search in the particular HTML that we just received in PyCharm. So we'll search for it. Okay. So we got 5 instances of it. Most of them are inside a function. And we have this div class. So we see that this is empty right now. So we do not have any content load up over here. So the logic over here is we have a JavaScript in the backend of this entire HTML running, which will fetch the table and put it in this blank space later on when the website is partially loaded up. So to overcome this, we have to first inspect all the JSON files as well as the JavaScript files that we are receiving while we request to this website, and find out the file which contains the entire JavaScript or the entire HTML code or maybe entire JSON code that will render into this final table. So for that, we will go to networks and we will just reload this entire page. So we see a lot of files coming in. So once we load up, we see that the table is not yet rendered. So some of the JavaScripts are still running, like this one and this one. And once they completely run, they finally render this table. So over here, if you are familiar with extensions, so HTML is the hypertext markup language document. JS are the JavaScript documents or a program which can run in your web browser itself. So we have HTML, we have JavaScript files, we have HTML again, and then we have JSON files, which is kind of a dictionary kind of file. We'll just go and inspect each file one at a time. So this gave us the page that we have in PyCharm. Similarly, these are all the JavaScript files. Okay. The next document file that we can see is we have this get toll plaza info grid. So we'll just go and inspect this. So this has the final table that we need to render into this table. If you want, you can just click on this, double click on this and go to this page. So it will redirect you to the entire response page, which has the entire table, which finally renders into the toll or list table. So now we know which particular file is responsible for rendering this table. So what we need to do is, rather than just requesting over here, we can send a request to this particular link and get the JSON file or the HTML file directly, and then render that as a table in PyCharm. For that, we can right click on this, copy the value, copy C URL or curl. So this will give all the headers as well as the cookies, as well as all the relevant details which we need to send, like cache control, content type, date, encoding, language, connections, redirects, referrer, and this entire detail will be copied in the curl URL. Now, to convert this curl into a Python code, you can use some pre-built web apps like curlconverter.com. Over here, you can just paste your curl command and choose whichever language that you prefer. So for now, I just want to look at it in Python. Otherwise, if you are using some other language like PHP, R, Rust, etc., you can also get the same thing over here. Okay, so this gives me the entire code of how to get this particular file. I will just copy this and paste it in my PyCharm. See, there's a difference. This is also post request. So all the data that we send over here are kind of encapsulated and is not accessible to others. And we are sending some data over here. We are sending our cookies, etc. So the post request is used over here. Okay. So once we have the response, we will just print response dot text and see what happens. Okay, so we got this Unicode character kind of thing, and over here we see that we have received this toll plaza pop-up number. So we are receiving the entire HTML, and we are also receiving the important part in which we want to focus on. So we have the text and we have the HTML. So now all we need to do is find out each instance of such pattern and extract the number from it. Okay, to do that, we will be using a module called RE module. So it will let us define some certain kind of parameters. It is kind of similar to find a string in Python, but it is kind of more advanced. Over here you can customize your own patterns as well as the match conditions, and finally get the result over here, which is a very crucial library in its own, and having a mastery over it will really help you a lot. So we'll import RE module, and what we'll do, we will create a list, say L, which will have RE dot all the instance, find all, and over here we will define our pattern. Okay, so to define our pattern, we'll just use this entire thing. So my string needs to be starting with this particular pattern. Okay, and these brackets needs to be escaped via a backslash. Okay, so any special character like apostrophe, brackets, etc. needs to be escaped like this. Then over here I will write something as %d plus, okay, and then close the brackets. This will state that find all the patterns which says JavaScript tool plaza popup, has a bracket, and over here %d means any character which is of type integer. Okay, 1 2 3 4 5 6 0, etc. and one or at least one or more character of such kind. Okay, and then we also need an ending bracket. So we will provide the documentation, official documentation of RE module, as well as the basic understanding of it via W3 schools in our links. So you can go ahead over there and understand all the type of patterns that you can create. Okay, so we have defined our pattern, and now we just need to put the text that we have to get all the list of entire such pattern matches. We'll put the response over here, and we will put text. So response request.post will give us a response object. Once we get the text attribute of that object, we will have this particular string over here. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and print the list that we just extracted, and let's see what happens. Okay, cool. So we have extracted successfully all the instances where we have this kind of match, where we have this string starting with JavaScript tool plaza popup and has the object ID inside it and the closing bracket. Okay, now we just want to extract this number. We do not want anything to do with it, with the string that we have. We just want to extract the number, and with this number we just want to go to that website, change the number to that, and get the data in Python. Okay, so for that we will write a list comprehension over here, which will give me IDs. Okay, what it will do, we will again do this pattern kind of matching, but this time we'll just match it with D rather than the entire script. Okay, so we just want to extract the number out of it, so we will just use \d plus. Okay, so let's write that and see how that works. RE dot find all \d plus, and over here I will just use a template string for str in L. Okay, so this find all will give me a list of all the values. So from that list, which will be of length 1, I will just extract the 0th element. So let's see what IDs give us. Okay, so once this runs, we see that we have successfully extracted all the tool plaza IDs. Okay, into a list. Okay, so right now they are just rendered as a string. We'll just change the type to integer directly over in the list comprehension to get the same. Okay, so we have list of all the tool plaza IDs, and using this we can loop over this web page and get the information for each plaza. Okay, great. So next step is we will understand how to scrape this particular website, this particular web page, and get this particular information, the table as well as the plaza name. Okay, so to scrape this particular page, we will just first understand how this page is built. Okay, so what are the things that we want to extract from here? We just want to extract the name from this particular part, and we want to extract this table from here. So we'll go ahead and see, inspect this particular part and see where does it reside in the HTML doc. Okay, so we see that it is inside a div class called PA15, where we have a paragraph tag. Inside that we have a label which has the details about it. Okay, so let us confirm this with some other page as well. Okay, so I will go to some random page again. Okay, this particular page, and just want to see that if this logic follows up through all such pages. Okay, I will right click over here, inspect, and see that, okay, again it is inside a label tag, inside a paragraph tag, and finally inside a div class called PA15. So to narrow this down, we have to first find this div class PA15, then the paragraph tag, and then finally the label tag in which it resides. So to do that, we will first make a request to this page via request module and check if the entire document is being loaded up or not. If it is there, that's good enough. Then we can just go ahead and extract it this way. Okay, so let's jump to PyCharm and copy this link and build that way. And just comment these parts out for now. So the working code that we have right now includes we are importing request and we are sending a GET request to this page. So let's see if this has the entire document or not. Okay, so the page has loaded up, and we will just go ahead and see if this has already rendered this name or not. So we'll just copy this name, search in the text, and we found that yes, it is coming directly rather than the other way that we have seen in the first page. We are directly able to find this in this document. Okay, so no need to do some other hassle work over here. We can also check like whether this text number is populating or not. If this is there, then we are good to go with this particular setup only. Okay, so we have this values as well. Okay, so this particular HTML document has all the required information. We just need to parse it right now. Okay, so to parse this HTML document, we will be using a module called BeautifulSoup. Okay, so for that, what we have to do is we have to import from BS4, import BeautifulSoup class, and then create a soup object of this BeautifulSoup class. Over here, you have to pass the entire HTML document, and to specify it, how do you want to parse this? Since it's a HTML document, we will use the HTML.parser. So this will give me a browsable object which has various attributes and function to find particular elements of a HTML document. Okay, so we have seen that this entire section resides in a class called PA15. Inside that, we have this label tag, which gives us the name of it. So we'll write the same thing in PyCharm. So to extract the plaza name, what we want to do is we want to find the class. So mind here that class has this underscore, as otherwise it will collide with the name keyword class of Python. So here we have to specify class with an underscore. This signifies this particular class in HTML. So we will find the class which has PA15, find all the paragraph elements over there, okay, and just extract the first one because that is the one that we are looking for. So there are two paragraph tags over here which are interested in just the first one right now. So we'll extract the first one, that is index 0, and then we will find the label in that. The label has this information of name. So once we have this information, we can just simply say that as a plaza name. So let's see and check whether this is working or not. So instead of outer text, I will just print plaza name. Okay, so we are getting a HTML tag, okay, object over here. To extract the text part of it, we will need to say plaza.text. Okay, so we found the name of it, so that we can store in a variable, and we can later use that to create a table in Pandas. Okay, so next step is we want to extract this particular table. So we will inspect this again. We will see where this table resides. So this table is particular has a class of tool info TBL, which includes this entire table: body, headings, and row items. Okay, to get this in PyCharm, we will just write soup.find all tables. This will give me all the instances of table tag. Then in particular, I just wanted to find the table which has this tool info TBL. So if there are multiple, it will just select the first one. For now, you can check how many table info classes are there. You can just search the HTML over here with this syntax and check how many instances are there. Okay, so there is this particular class which has table info TBL as well as MT10 class, and there is this class that has just this particular class in it. Okay, so we are just interested in the first one, so we'll say the element is 0 of it. So if you have the table, we can just go ahead and print the HTML of the table. Okay, we got the table and the row items and the column, as well as the values of each particular cell over here. So all we need to do is right now make this table to a Pandas data frame. Okay, so for that it is really easy. What we can do is we can directly pass this particular string to pandas read.html, and that will be able to create a data frame out of it. Okay, so I will just uncomment this line. So this X is just nothing but the string version of this table tag, because this table right now is an object of soup class. So we'll just create a string object of it and then pass to pandas data frame. So we have imported pandas as PD. Okay, so we'll just create pandas.readHTML. We will pass this particular string, the entire string, over here and select the first data frame that comes up. So drop in a and how is equal to all is something that we can cover later. Okay, so let us see how this pd.readHTML works. So once you pass the entire string to p.read.html, it will create a list of tables that it can identify. Okay, so for this, let us just debug this once. Just run this entire code in a debug mode. So for that, you can put a debug marker over here. So this will say debug till here, and I will just right click and run in debug mode, or you can go over here as well as run in debug mode. Similar exercise can be done in VS Code as well. The graphics would be a little bit different, but I'm sure that it has that option as well. We'll just debug it just to show you how this works. So we have all the variables listed over here. So y is right now a list of 1. So it has a list of data frames. Okay. And we are just interested in the first data frame that we have. Since it has only one element, we just extract the first of it. So we will just write p.read.html, give me the first data frame that you have in the list of data frames. So again, I will just debug it, stop and rerun. Okay, now I got a data frame which has this table converted to a data frame. Okay, if you inspect this, so you are able to see the entire data table that we have in HTML is now rendered as a Pandas data frame. Okay, great. So also we see that there are few rows which has null values entirely. So we just want to drop this for now because they do not represent anything. And all the other rows that we have are already included over here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 rows are already here. And any row which has nan all across, we just want to drop that for now. So I will just say drop NA. And how do you want to drop it? I want to drop all the rows which has NAs. And how? When all the values are null. Okay, you can also specify if any of them are null, but in this case I just wanted to stick it this way. Okay, so now that once we have written this drop statement, if we debug, we will be able to see that all our null values are removed and we have the exact data frame that we have over here in HTML. Okay, great. So the next step is we will create another complete table which will have the tool info plaza name as well as the date in which it was scraped, and put that in our table, and finally put that in a SQL table. Okay, so for that I will just stop this debug mode. Okay, I will just uncomment these particular lines to see how this works. Okay, so we'll create a list of columns to know all the list of column names that we have in this table. Then at the very first, I will just insert a column called date scraped. This will have the date in which the data was scraped. The second column would be the plaza name. Okay, and this way we will have a complete table, and this will complete the data set that we have. And finally, we will store this data in a SQLite DB. Okay. So to understand this, we will just go ahead and get all the list of column names that we have. Then we will insert the data scraped date, time, the plaza name, and we will just rearrange the data frame so that it has these two columns in first and then the rest of the columns. And then we will put this data frame to SQL. So we'll just comment this line for now and show you how the data frame looks after this rearrangement. Okay, so we now got 7 columns. Previously we had just 5. So this shows the date scraped. the plaza name in which we are scraping, and finally all the other information that we had previously. Okay. So now comes the storing to the database part. Okay. So for this exercise, we are using a very light database called SQLite. And the package that we need to import for this is SQLite 3. We just need to create a file with an extension of .db. So if you have this file already created, then we can just paste the file path over here. Otherwise, it will create a particular file with this extension name and whichever path that you specify while connecting this. So we will connect to this and we will create a cursor object, which is for now not required at all, I think. So all you need to do is in Pandas data frame, once you have a data frame object, you are able to access all the methods that it has. So one very popular method, and one this is very essential as well, is toSQL method. So what it does is you need to specify the table name in which you want to write this data frame to, the connection string, and few other parameters that you can specify. So once we write this, it will be able to create a new database called nhi-tool-info.db. In that, it will create a new table. If it already exists, it will append to that table and write this entire data frame to there. Okay. So we will just run this once to check how this works. Okay. So I have I have this DB already created. So I will just copy this path for now. And we can go to dbeaver. So dbeaver is a software which lets you write SQL code, connect to multiple databases, and explore SQL. Okay. So over here, to connect to SQL, you can just right click on this connection button, select SQLite, and paste the absolute path over here. And you can either test connection or click on finish. Okay. So it will connect to your database of your choice. And then you can create a new SQL script out of it. Okay. So once this database is created, you can see the table name that we had specified earlier, which is nhi-tool-info, has already been created. And you can select from this table. And we see that entire flow that we have created is now complete. We are able to put everything that we have scraped to a database along with additional manipulations that we have done on it and column additions. And finally, it's in a database. So the entire flow that we have right now is we will go to this page, get a list of all the tool IDs. Then for each tool ID, we'll go to this page, change this ID to the tool ID that we want to extract, and get the name and the other information from it, and finally put that to a database. Okay. So what we will do is we will encapsulate this entire logic, entire flow into a class called ETL. Over there, we will have the extraction logic and the storing logic to the database. And we will create an object for each of such pages, run that in multithreading, and complete this entire process. Okay. So for that, let's jump back to PyCharm and understand the class that we want to create. Okay. So for this, I have created this ETL class. Okay. So what it will have is it's a class of name ETL. So each class needs to have an init function, which will define what will be some values when it gets initialized. How do you want to store? How do you want to create this class? What are the initial values that you want to pass it? So for the initial value that I want to pass when creating an object of this class is the tool plus ID, the SQL file path name. The file path is the DB file path name to connect to SQLite, and finally write to that DB, and the table name. Okay. So then I will put all this to an attribute of the class or the object. So I will have an attribute called plaza ID, which will store the plaza ID. I will have the SQL path as attribute, SQL file table name as an attribute, and store it there. Then I will create a new attribute called URL. Over here, I will encapsulate my logic of creating a new URL to fetch for that particular plaza. Then I will have soup object just to initialize over here. So ideally, we should always mention all the attributes that we are going to have in the init, whether it's empty or not. So we will also create a db.info, which is of type pandas.dataframe. Okay. Then over here, we will have the extraction logic. This is going to be same as the extraction logic that we have put over here in our Scratch file. So we will find the class PA15, find all the paragraph tags, and then find the label tag, and finally get the text out of it. Okay, the same thing is done over here. So over here, we are requesting the page, and we are extracting the soup object. If it is able to find the object, then we are going to proceed further. Otherwise, we are not going to proceed further, and that is going to be written in the run statement. Okay. So the next thing is we want to transform this. Okay. So once we have the bare bones HTML, we want to do some transformation, create our own columns, and then create the entire data frame that we want to store into SQLDB. So first we will extract the plaza name, similar to what we have done in the Scratch file. Then we will extract the entire table. Then we will put the table as a data frame. Then we will do the column manipulation. So over here, I have also added the toll plaza ID so that we can have the IDs stored as well. Then I will append these particular details into the data frame that we just created, and finally pass this data frame to the load function. So when you are trying to communicate from one particular function or one particular method of a particular class to the other one, we usually pass them the self object, self attribute, and each self has the object details of any communication that you want to pass. So if I want to use this particular df info in some other method, I can just simply write as df info rather than calling this or storing this in a global method. We can directly pass it via self. Okay. So the communication is set. Right now, we will just load this entire data frame. Similarly, what we have done in the Scratch file to the database path. And these are the 3 steps of an ETL pipeline: extract, transform, and load. And finally, we will just run all of this together in this run method. So anytime you create an object of class ETL, you just need to run this run ETL method to get everything flowing. Okay, so over here, we'll just extract it. Okay. And with extraction, we are also returning whether it's true or false. So if the page is already empty, it does not have any class PA15, so there is no point of going beyond this step. So we can just skip that step and proceed ahead. So we'll check if this particular extract function is working or not. If it has worked properly and it has returned us a true flag, then we'll just go ahead and create the transform and the load part, and finally print that ETL for this plaza has been done. Else we will just say that this plaza is skipped and this is due to unavailability of the website or whatsoever. Okay, so for this we are using the same modules over here: request, BeautifulSoup, Pandas, SQLite, and datetime. Okay, so the next step is we want to fetch all the initial plaza IDs and feed that into the main program that we have. So for that, we will just create a new file called fetch plaza or IDs. Over here, we will encapsulate the function which will have the logic to find all the plaza IDs, similar to what we have done in the other Scratch file. where we have extracted all the IDs and put them in a list, we'll just put this entire thing in a function at a particular file. Okay, so we are just importing RE module over here. So we have encapsulated the entire logic that we have written in the Scratch file over here. So with this function, once this runs, it will give me the list of all the IDs that we have and as a string. So we can just run this function once to check whether this is giving us the apt output or not. Okay, so it has returned us a list of all the Toll Plaza IDs and we are able to fetch it this way. Okay, so next thing is we want to encapsulate everything into a main file, which will first fetch IDs using this particular function from this file, and then create an object of class ETL for each of such IDs, run the pipeline, store into a database. Okay, great. So for that, I will just close this all together right now, and let's focus on the main file. So let us encapsulate everything into a main file and run this entire pipeline. Okay, so for this, I'm importing the ETL class from the ETL module that we have just created. We are importing datetime to get the current date. We are also importing the get all plaza IDs function that we created to fetch all the IDs of the plazas. We are using concurrent.feature, so this will be used to create multi-threaded codes, and then we are using the partial function creator from functools. Okay, so to understand this partial function once, so let us just use one example right now. So suppose you have one function, say sum a b c d. Okay, over here you have to pass 4 parameters and it will sum them all and return it. However, say this function is used multiple times and we have 2 or 3 of these parameters always constant. So a is always 1, b is always 2, c is always 3. However, the value of d is getting updated every time on each function call. So rather than writing this function, so it will return say a plus b plus c plus d. What we can do is we can create a partial function which will be using just one parameter. Okay, so from functool we will import partial. Over here first we have to pass the function which we want to partialize, and then we want to specify all the parameters that we want to keep constant during entire call. Okay, so b is going to be 2, c is going to be 3. Okay, so right now we have created a partial function. This is extension of this function itself, where only just one parameter is going to change, rest of all will be same. Okay, part. Okay, so it is partial func and we will just pass. Okay, so in this function we are just changing the particular field. Rather than writing this multiple times, we are able to write just one change in the partial function and use it multiple times. So similar logic is going to be used in this particular function itself. Okay, so we will create a function ETL object and run. It will take plaza IDs, db file path, db name. It will create an object and run the entire flow. Okay, it will create the object of ETL class and run the entire flow and store it in the database. So we are also providing the database file path and the database file name. Okay, so to make this program more dynamic, what I have done is I have made this file path and file name configurable, and with the table name it will append the current date with it, so that anytime you run, you also get the information on which day it was run, and create a new database or new table every time it runs. We will extract all the IDs via the function that we have written. Then we create a partial function, which will be an extension of this particular function, but with the constant file path name and file and table name. Okay. Then comes the important part. Okay, over here we are trying to create, and then we are going to run that in multi-threaded mode. So in multi-threading, a program is divided into multiple segments, and each segment runs in parallel. Okay. So whenever there is an IO bound operation happening and the core is free, so then another segment of the program goes in and runs in the same time, and does not let the CPU have any wastage of time in its computation. Okay. So we will use 10 threads, and we will map this function to this list of IDs. So what it will do, it will create 10 threads, partition all these IDs into 10 set of IDs, list of IDs, and for each list of them, it will run a partial function, which will run the entire flow of it. Okay. So to see it running, I will just pass, say, like 100 IDs for now, and see it in action. Okay, you see these all are running in parallel right now. So rather than running one at a time, or running this in a for loop, which will run only one ID and extract the entire process for only one tool plaza at a time, we are running multiple of them at a time, storing into the database, and thus we will be able to achieve or extract the entire pipeline in a much quicker way had we used the other method or the procedural method over here. Okay, so once this finishes, we will have a database over here, which we will just connect and see how that table looks over there. Okay, the code has run and the database has been created. So we'll just copy the path, the absolute path. We will go to the dbeaver, connect to SQLite, paste the path over here, finish, and create an SQL script from it. Okay, then over here we will be able to see that a new table of current date, or the name of the current date, has been created. So we'll just select star from HI tool info, and we'll be able to see all the entries that has been made over here. Okay, great. So right now we have the complete ETL flow running from extracting the data from the web page and running the entire web page for each of the tool plazas, and finally putting that into a database. Okay, so with this exercise, we have learned how to inspect a web page, scrape that web page, build an ETL pipeline, and make that pipeline quicker using multi-threading. We have learned the concepts of concurrent modules, storing them to databases. We have also touched base upon how to use and create patterns and match it via RE modules. And we have created programs using object-oriented programming paradigm. So with this learnings, this session comes to an end. If you have liked this session, please do share your feedback, comments, and suggestion in the comment section. Please share this video with your peers, and please subscribe to Naukri Learning for more such content. Thank you.